So to keep a loyal clientele, I think it's important that they love you just as much as they love your work, right? I think if the client falls in love with you as well as your work, more likely they're going to be loyal. Because if you think about it, especially nowadays, there's lots of people doing really good work, really great work. So what's going to keep that client with you if you're not the only one in your area doing beautiful brows or beautiful hair or, whatever it is you do? If there's multiple choices on technicians that are doing beautiful work. And that difference is you. If that client forms a connection with you, that becomes really powerful, really super powerful. So that's always been my goal. And, I got that little tidbit from Tony Robbins many, 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 many years ago, when CDs were a thing. I could not afford his CDs, but I had a friend who had his CDs, and she copied them for me and gave them to me as a gift one time. And I listened to him like crazy. And that's one of the big nuggets that really struck me from his lecture, was that it's just as important for the client to fall in love with you, who you are, as it is your work or the service you're providing. And it made sense to me. It made perfect sense to me. So from that day forward, I made it a point to be really personal with my clients while maintaining a professional boundary as well. I'm somebody, 22 years in business, and I have never gone to dinner with a client. I've never done anything recreational with a client outside of work. I've always kept that professional boundary. But when they're in my studio, in the procedure room with me, then I make it very personable. And one thing that I do is I want to know about them. So I ask them questions. Do they have kids? Are there kids in school? Usually people like talking about their kids. I like the client to do a lot of to do most of the talking. I want to learn about them. I ask about their dogs. I'll even have them, well, let me see a picture of your dog. And then I have dogs. So then that's something I can really bond with on a client. I can show them pictures of my dogs, and then we can bond on the dog thing, the animal thing. I'll ask them about music. Do you like this playlist? Do you like this song? Do you like my music? And usually they say yes. And we'll start talking about music. If it's someone of a certain age, they're probably going to like Elvis Presley, or if they're dressed a certain way, then they're probably country. Then I'll mention Loretta Lynn and Tammy Wynette. And, if they're younger, then I'll mention, musicians that are from, a more modern area. And I'll connect with them on music. I like to play little TV games and test them on like different TV sitcoms. So there's lots of things that you can connect with on your client, with your clients, that are really fun. Ask them if they're going on any trips coming up soon. And it just creates like a bond, and it allows you to connect. When I walk the client out, I always ask them if I can hug them goodbye. I like to hug, but I understand some people don't like that personal closeness, so I always do ask. I tell them I'm a hugger. Can I hug you goodbye? And I've never had anybody say no. I don't think once in 22 years. So I always hug my clients goodbye. And when I go back into my room, I write my notes. And in my notes are a lot of those personal tidbits that I learned about that client. I will write down their dog's name, their kid's name, where their kids went to college, if they mention they're going to Hawaii in 2 months, I'll write that on my notes. I'll write lots of different things. If there's a certain artist or actress that they really, really like, I'll write that down. And then if there's any news that pops up about that artist or actor, in the meantime, that's something that I can talk to them about on their next appointment. And it's very impressive, you guys, when your client does come in, a year, 2 years, 3 years later, and you get out your notes, you get out your client form on them, and you're refreshing yourself, and and the memories come back. You can almost, because of the notes I write, I can almost put myself back and remember my time with them. Because when you do a lot of clients, sometimes it's hard to remember, like in detail, your time with them. But I'll refresh my notes, and all the conversations start to, come back, and I'll ask them, hey, how's your dog, Muffy? Or how's David, your son, and how's college going up at Dartmouth or whatever? How was your did you ever make it out to that trip to Hawaii? And they're really impressed that you remember. You remember their dog's name. You remember their kid's name. You remember these details. And oftentimes they'll say, wow, I'm impressed. I can't remember that. And my comeback is always, well, you're my favorite client. And they love that. Big smile ends up on their face. And that's usually when I'll, like a little pat on the shoulder or give them a little half hug, things like that. I've always been that way with my clients, and it's always worked really, really well for me. Aftercare kits, chocolate, and a nice little note in a nice bag. That's another way to provide a really good client experience. Your aftercare kit. It can be as simple. If you're not a hugger, if it's hard for you to be personable with clients or people that you don't know, and I understand that there are people out there like that. They're not, it's more difficult for them to be, personable. Maybe they're a little drier. So what about an aftercare kit? Maybe you fluff up your aftercare kit. Put a nice chocolate in there, buy some nice little bags that everything goes in. Of course, your aftercare instructions, your aftercare bomb, and then type up a thank you, and then put down, write something really super sweet and send it off to Vistaprint. You can get, 100 cards for
$20?
For 100 cards for $20. Sit down and just write something. I want to thank you for blah, 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 blah. And when they get home, they open it up, and there's this great little note from you, and there's a chocolate. And, it can be as simple as that. Do you do follow-up calls, emails or messages after the procedure to check on them? I did back in the day for a period of time, and then I stopped. And I probably stopped because it was just me. And it was too hard for me. God, it was hard enough for me to keep up with the incoming calls and booking clients. So imagine me trying to then do follow-up calls and follow-up messages just to check in to see how they're healing. So I didn't keep that up. But it does add to the client experience. I have some colleagues that do that. They do follow up with an email or a message just to check in on their healing. I have some clients colleagues that say, oh, hell no. Every time I tried to follow up with a client, it was, well, the scab's this, the color's this, it's lighter than, it opened up a whole can of worms. So, but just something to consider. It's all about the client experience, right? Because that's what's going to separate you from the rest. Because as I mentioned, there's a lot of artists out there in all the different cities, all the different areas of the world doing great work. Our industry has more talent and skill today, now, than ever before, which is great for the industry. It's great for all of us. It really, truly is. But it can also, it can cause you to have to work a little bit harder to stand out. And keep clients loyal to you and not jumping around artist to artist to artist. And a way to do that is enhancing your client experience, the client's experience, and having them just find you absolutely adorable and falling in love with you.